All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm very, very excited for this. A little bit stressed, but that's the nature of debate, right? Mac and I are going to be doing a demo debate on sort of substantive policy style approach to the November-December 2025 topic. I'm going to be honest, I don't know the exact wording of the resolution offhand, but it's all about lawful access from the government to encrypted technologies. We have been to one tournament on this topic, so we're kind of like pushing the debate a little bit forward. So a lot of this debate is kind of testing out what those backline strategies are going to look like. The F and the neg are extraordinarily related unless Mac changed his neg and I don't know about it, right? And so this is going to be a really good example, I think, of a clash debate and what you should be looking for in high-level substantive rounds. This will not be an example of debate where, we're just going for impact calculus and like praying for the best, right? Both of us are definitely going to have to do some resolution of very in-depth clash later in the debate. And so I think this is going to be really, really cool, right? To me, I know Mac has heard me say this before. I think I talked about this on his channel once. Like, I am not super into just like the generic impact calculus debate. I think it's something easy to teach at camp, but I don't think it's something like super useful for like actually winning the highest of level rounds, because one person's good at going for a link turn and you're cooked, right? And so I really, really want people to start focusing on like the skills of like link weighing, right? Which is what this debate, I promise you, will be about. If it's not about that, I'll be shocked, right? But hopefully it will be. So without further ado, let's try to get through this. Hopefully you all can understand me. I'm like kind of bad at spreading, but we gotta try, right? We gotta try. Do you want me to send you the doc, Mac?
Sure. Yeah. Also, I'll flag. I've learned recently that being 2 miles above sea level actually affects spreading as well. It's like because the oxygen in the is lower. So I've been having more trouble spreading. I'm like, what? Am I just washed? But no, I think I have an excuse this time.
Okay, I like that. That's gonna help me a little bit, right?
Yeah, maybe so. I don't think I would be very fast either way.
After I got cooked in the last debate, I need to redeem myself. Okay, I sent it to the Slack, so it should be.
Okay, let me just.
Should be in there. I sent it in the general just in case any of the kids wanted it too. All right. Well, I'm good. I got my timer. Okay. Everyone ready? I guess I don't know who I'm asking except for you. Contention 1 is authoritarian power creep sidestepping judicial procedure creates a cycle of confrontation that hinders effective governance and leads to constitutional crisis that grows in 1825. The Trump administration's actions undermine the presumption of regularity. Courts feel compelled to inquisitorial methods. Such heightened scrutiny could unduly hinder legitimate and time-setting government functions, potentially chilling lawful executive action when administrator forces government lawyers into a difficult position. This dilemma can drive experienced ethical lawyers out of public service, eroding institutional integrity and capacity. This leads to less effective representation errors, creating a negative feedback loop, escalating confrontations that the judiciary is ill-equipped to and potentially leading to constitutional crisis, pushing the relationship between courts and the executive into uncharted, dangerous territory, and lawful access curtails the extrajudicial power creep through transparent public partnerships. That's Core 17. Terrorist organizations rely on communication for command and control. The government will not simply give up dark places, push the government towards extra measures to restrain counterintelligence and statutory mandate that encryption built-in front-door access measures can be adopted to mitigate threats such as like availability of lawful access will incentivize judicial authorization, enhancing protection against improper government access. Lawful access will enhance privacy protection, incentivize government-private information sharing on security breaches, and will disincentivize pursuit of extrajudicial methods in an era of virtually endless armed conflict. Excessive restriction of the law enforcement response authority is an expansion of the wartime response authority, and only a restrained executive prevents endless war and a great power escalation. That's Ingrid 25. Most decisions made by the president go through an executive bureaucratic interagency process. Decisions involved in intelligence, community justice, and State Department, from cyber operations to more traditional use of force subdivisions throughout the executive, may bring the country to war. The risk of escalation comes to the United States as deployed troops. The decision to use force is not happening in a void. Rather, is a conflict that is escalating against a backdrop of years of back and forth decisions. Efforts to change the world status quo must contend with the reality of decision-making. Dispersal congressional reform must explicitly reject executive interpretations and runaway U.S.-China competition makes misaligned AI inequitable filters after every existential scenario. That's Meacham 23. If a world cannot manage the race of superhuman AI between great powers, everything will die. The United States and China AI risk is likely to accelerate the risk of development of AI pressure, outpace adversaries pushing tech that we do not fully understand, represent an external risk, and more mere perception of arms safety. I push companies and the governments to eschew the safety regulations. AI is giving control, nuclear command access, passions can engineer an existential crisis. Contention 2 is cyber innovation. U.S. cyber vulnerability is up now due to fragmented regulations, undermining cooperation between government corporations and foreign powers. That's heading 25. Cybersecurity is under unprecedented strain. Recent operations have averted U.S. critical infrastructure 1.5 billion. We've seen an increase in cyber attacks policy level. 70% of response report an increase in risk for national cybersecurity. Most successful approaches are anchored around public-private international partnerships. 87% of CEOs say new regulations help reduce systemic risk and increase customer support. 2/3 of organizations report that navigating an increased fragmented global compliance networks adds complexity and cost. And lawful access to encrypted cross-border data builds public-private partnerships and collaborative cyber resilience, says Ribeiro 25. The fight against cybercrime depends on data as a driver of innovation. Lawful access to data strengthens collective defense coverage. Cross-border data availability and stronger public-private partnerships tracks and disrupt cybercriminals, updating regulatory frameworks to ensure collaboration between governments and industry, creating resilient systems. And U.S. tech advantages transcend regulation. That's Bradford 24. US-EU differences include fragmented digital market, underbuilding capital markets, punitive bankruptcy laws, and proactive immigration policy directly contribute U.S. tech safeguarding rights and freedoms. Do not have a problem choosing between regulated tech issue will not force U.S. to forego innovation or lose race against China. And regulation of data technologies will drive innovation. That's Leverson 25. For emerging technologies, blockchain, tech, artificial regulation could help responsible and safe use. Adaptation regulation is a core driver of innovation in markets. And threats and eagle on safety and privacy at Savage 18. The current state of affairs is lawful access via lawful hacking. Public dollars fund corporation who develop zero-day exploits. This provides no technical safeguards against surveillance nor use and misuse by criminal parties. The issues become highly politicized by loaded terminology like going dark and backdoors. Self-escrow access into a co-located hardware component integrated via physical safety design offers the benefit of massive rails, while the extended physical access requirement requiring no change to existing underlying cryptographic algorithms. And cyber defense is key. Even a short-term grid failure spurs one-way disease and systemic collapse at Apollo 19. Loss of power results from facilities halt outbreak of disease occur in a matter of hours. Vaccine required for restoration, creating artificial shortages. Hospitals spend on electricity, delay and loading goods. At seaport, and cascading effects critical goods like oil, medicine, food. Even a short-term outage who have drastic impacts on business. Loss of power could have devastating farm production and pandemic is essential. That's less than 20. The interconnections of civilization and transition to urban life will increase a novel economic exploration to occur. Affecting curb disease, we need social and community resilience. Warmings, permafrost, releasing ancient viruses. Growing demand for meat is increasing the chance of influence and making jump. The rapid democratization of biotechnology, the power of schools available, ongoing research into life could wreak havoc. The main candidate for biological extinction. I did not read the Pearson 23 card that is marked.
Okay, no problem.
Card that's marked though. I read the Leverton link card.
Yeah, sounds good.
The read in the doc was Pearson 23.
Cool. Okay. I will also send this in the chat. Give me a sec to actually like make it into a doc. Okay, I'm putting it in the same channel. Cool. Are you ready? Guess I should stand up. Just give me a thumbs up when you are. Cool. This topic gives law enforcement agencies access to nearly unlimited data from the devices of each and every person in the US. What do you think they might use this data for? Canon 23. The US criminal legal system is racist. Black people are 5 times more likely to get locked up. There's no shortage of commentators who pen the same old trope. Be a good citizen, do whatever the nice officer says, and you'll be fine. But behaviors cannot override a bad system. The only explanation is that the mechanisms of the US state have artificially created an abundance of criminals. The poorest communities are the easiest prey for officers who need to meet quotas. Many of the poor communities in the US are populated by people of color, thanks to redlining. While anyone can be arrested at any time for anything or nothing for it all, the target on your back becomes bigger if you're poor and black. Players in the criminal legal system, including cops, judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys, equate blackness with criminality. The law assumes that the diagram between black and criminal is a perfect circle. In this context, encryption has become a tool for black survival. McLaughlin 16. Learning how to make oneself opaque is a necessity in political tactics. States digitally log our every interaction. States describe encrypted communications as threats. How do we resist such demands? The black box provides a model for the black bloc to survive. To resist the hegemony of the transparent, we need to embrace techniques of becoming dark to assert our agency without being apprehended. The lives and rights of marginalized people everywhere depend on end-to-end encryption. McNamee 25. Encryption is the vessel for power and agency, protecting autonomy, dignity, and safety from marginalized communities. Governments would weaken encryption for everyone, especially those already subject to historical patterns of state overreach. Stakes are high. 1 in 5 homicide victims in the US have been killed by an intimate partner. Survivors rely on encrypted messaging to contact support, coordinate escape, or document their experiences. Encryption protects survivors' communication from their abuser. People seeking reproductive care need encryption to protect information that could implicate them. Lattice Fisher was charged with second-degree murder after having a stillbirth
based on her phone data. Gender responsive policymaking requires governments to center the needs of women and gender minorities. Agencies have contracted experts to find reasons why this is necessary for your security. They tell a story of doomsday. They predict an apocalypse if you do not give up your rights. But how have these experts' predictions panned out in the past? The apocalypse never seems to arrive, but death dates and sentences for Black and brown bodies sure as hell do. Menando 5, the accuracy of an expert's predictions has an inverse relationship to her renown. People who read the papers can guess as accurately as specialists. Our system of expertise rewards bad judgments. Human beings who spend their entire lives studying the state of the world are poorer forecasters than dart-throwing monkeys. I'm tired of playing this game. We're all being conned. Jackson 12, national security is one big con designed to distract you from poverty, inequality, and structural violence. You're far more likely to die from a lack of healthcare than terrorism or missiles. Displays of security theaters such as surveillance cameras convince you that these threats are really, really serious. The rulers of society are hoping that you won't notice the growing underclass, that domestic violence kills and injures thousands of women and children annually. Politicians are a part of the system. They don't want to change. Yet for them, all the insecurity, all the death, all the ill health are a price worth paying to keep the basic societal structures as they are. Egalitarian society would not suit their interests or the interests of the lobby groups that they are indebted to. For politicians looking toward the next election, it is easier to paint immigrants as a threat or pontificate about ongoing danger of terrorists. It is more exciting for the media than stories about how poor people and people of color are discriminated against. National security's primary function is to distract you from the structures which are the real threat to well-being and to convince you to be permanently afraid so that you will acquiesce to all the security measures which keep you under state control and keep the military-industrial complex ticking. If you think that terrorists or immigrants or Iran are a greater threat to your safety than the system, you've been conned. But if your mouth froths at the thought of judging fake war scenarios, here are 5. Other countries won't worry that we'll spy on their citizens or politicians, calling them to cut ties or preemptively strike us or stop sharing surveillance in the chaos of Russia attacks Europe or China goes for Taiwan. And fence-sitters use this as an excuse to increase authoritarian surveillance, sparking war, civil wars from resistance, which could also happen in the U.S. because the resolution and drags and invest great powers, and no one will buy from the U.S. cyber industry when they think it'll backdoor, and no profits means no cyber progress spills over. Globally means satellites get hacked means no command and control, so nomad. Also, that's econ and innovation. When tech companies suddenly lose customers means global confidence and security guarantees tank. So allies preemptively lash out or get invaded or proliferate, causing accidents. And this, I'm going to go to your case now. You say with this Core 17 evidence that is woefully outdated that if you create government reliance on lawful access, it might reduce the unlawful stuff going on now. But there's no government reliance on this. This is just another tool in the government's toolbox. Instead, it will free up more resources to continue doing the unlawful stuff that they're currently using more resources on, which is also harder to actually access. For example, the FBI case against Apple took them many, many months just to unlock one phone. So it's clearly very difficult for them to do this in the status quo.
Okay, let me get a timer. Okay, cool. So what's the link for ally credibility?
There are several. One of them
What are they?
is econ. So if I win that the economy falls, then allies don't think that the US economy is strong enough for the US to focus on affairs in other countries, for example, protecting those allies. They think that the US will turn inward, or they just don't think the US will be able to muster enough resources to help them. Can I ask you a question?
Sure. Oh, so those are the only links. The only link is econ goes down, so they're afraid. I
No.
thought there was something. Yeah, there was more, right? So what are the other links?
That was one example of a link. There are.
So what are the other links? Yeah.
Yeah, another link is, I mean, it might take a while to describe all of them, but so these are only links to specifically allied confidence, right? So one was econ, another one is, yeah. So. Well, I mean, there's 5 different arguments. Some of them are about allied confidence, some of them aren't. But there's another link about relations that says these other countries worry that because they also use US tech company platforms, that we will spy on their citizens or that we'll spy on their governments or politicians directly, which we have in the past. And so that also tanks allied confidence. There's a bunch of other stuff, but we've spent a while on this. Can I ask you a question?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, great. If every person with a uterus collectively refused to reproduce, would you force them to bear children for the greater good?
No, of course not.
Okay, great. If 100 experts told you that reintroducing slavery would reduce the chance of extinction by 20%, would you do it for the greater good?
No, of course not. The rebuttal will not be going for extinction first versus abortion. Obviously, this will be a link debate. Yeah.
Love it.
Okay, cool. So I want to know the rest of the links at the bottom.
Oh, yeah. You want me to just walk through everything?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I just don't see them in the doc. Right at the bottom of the doc, the last thing I have is the Menard card.
Really?
The last thing I have is Jackson12 said, "I'm tired of playing this game," and then you just. Oh wait, I see. Oh,
I think-
is this? It's just this like block of text at the bottom.
Yes, it's the block of text at the bottom.
Okay, sure.
I can also describe it though if you'd like.
No, I see it now. I'll just answer it there. It's fine. Okay, cool. So
I could
why
ask you
should
if you'd like.
yeah, no. I have a question. Why should the judge flow rebuttal responses in a constructive?
They're not rebuttal responses. They're just part of the constructive. They happen to interact with your case in a certain way.
You said on his case on corn, and then described why the guard was wrong with analytics. That was written pre in your constructive.
Yeah.
You didn't
So-
send it in the constructive you sent.
Certainly, I don't think it matters. Like, I think this is a very silly question, actually.
That's
A,
fine.
I could have done this in first constructive if I wanted to, if I like knew that you were going to read corn. Two, it's just a speech. A constructive speech is constructive, as in it creates material. I don't think I should be punished if that material interacts better with your case than not. That seems like very silly.
Yeah, facts. All right, starting prep. Okay, cool. You good?
Yes.
So the order will be my case on the corn stuff, and then straight down your case, starting with me saying a bunch of stuff, and then going line by line on your arguments. Cool. Ready? Duh! double blind at the top of their case. Either they get refutation in the constructive, and that means they get none in the rebuttal to avoid sandbagging, or they don't get it at all, which means that you ignore every single argument on this flow. But on their responses to Corn, literally no warrants. All they said that is the government is relying on it now. But we say it's empirically abide by the European Union, which saw a decline in actual authoritarian overstretch, and there's no warrant for it. He hasn't provided any newer evidence to dispute the unionist claim. Also, second is the zero-day stuff from the case takes this out because it says that the status quo is backdoors implemented by the government, which means they always have access to it. And three is prefer our evidence. You've just literally made unwarranted assertions. Go to your case now. As an overview, innovation solves all your arguments. Resolution doesn't mandate how they comply. That means that free market determines the winner. Options like hashing, split key, self-escrow, client-side scanning, plain text detection, zero knowledge proofs, homoroughing, encryption, and compelled disclosure are all potential options available now with varying benefits. App creates profit incentive to improve the threats in EU on privacy, security, and national security, and solves all their offense on their authoritarian or their overreach arguments. First, it's not unique. Roadside 25, Corn 17, and 17 all prove that governments build and exploit zero-day exploits now, which means it's tried out for judicial restraints. These legal pathways create a transparent accountability system that solves all of their offense. And two is the infrastructure they had committed. Ethical lawyers are leaving the executive in droves right now. That's Robinson 25, which also says that regulatory change encourages compliance and institutional integrity. This outweighs all of their arguments because potential FBI access it affects all actions in government. Remember, there are restrictions that happen on immigrants in the United States, individuals trying to get abortions that happen outside of encrypted channels and outside of legal access, which means that a larger judiciary, which they claim is racist, means that the more there are unethical people involved in that system, the more offense that we have. And third is the politics is that we take away all the political justifications for increased securitization. Every AF story that you have heard on this topic is propaganda used by the government to justify extrajudicial action. AF solves political viability of overreach. And four is a compliance that resolution says lawful access, which means the AF only has to defend warranted judicial procedure. Fiat solves all of your links. And five is panopticon. At best, you push people off of digital platforms, or we push people off of digital platforms, which is a good thing. That is net better for resistance. Metadata, GPS tracking, text surveillance means it's impossible to be subversive within a digital ecosystem. The myth is just more dangerous. On their line-by-line work, they say that other countries will worry that we'll spy, but this is the status quo since there's already backdoors and restraint solves that's a judicial sorry, and they don't have any warrants or evidence for this. And on fence sitters, they don't give us any examples of countries that are on the brink now. And that begs the question of the link, which we're winning on restraint. On U.S. is a resolution drags in invested great powers. There's literally no warrant here or no scenario that I don't know what to answer because it's in an argument. And they say that no one is going to buy from the U.S. cyber industry. This begs the question of the regulations of it. We prove that A, right now people are moving to the EU, and we've read arguments that said that right now they're not buying it because of the compliance split. Resolving the compliance split means that we make more profit. Specifically, it says that companies are burning dollars right now trying to meet both, which means that we always control the internal link here. They say that it's economy and tech innovation, but we say there's no warrant. The EU disproves and regulations increase confidence, which turns all of their offense. But we have a couple conceded arguments from the case that straight turn every one of these arguments. The first is distracted dissent. Infighting between companies and governments, there's a lack of cooperation on cyber infiltration, which just greenlights more actions. Every single cyber attack that happens just leads to more crackdowns against individuals, which always turns all their arguments. Two is the cooperation dissent. Fragmented standards right now in the US and the EU are not working together, which means it's always tried out for the FS headline 25. They've also conceded that zero-day vulnerabilities are the scope, and that the chronometrics dissent, which says that heightened security right now is happening and it's hindering cyber operations across the board. And they've conceded a data dissent, which shows that right now we can't backwards engineer cyber threats because there isn't collaboration between the government. Let's go to their line by line now. First, on their argument about black people being oppressed, they've conceded that judicial decline right now means to try to die. They say that black survival is relying on it. We say this is a myth that's more dangerous because people don't know that there's always backdoors from the government. They say that IPV happens right now. We say that's not high level enough. These individuals who are like oppressing individuals who are on household don't have access to high level hacking systems that can utilize backdoors, nor government surveillance structures. Support has turned data is key to legal work. We need to make sure that we have these options. All of their predictions, bad argument. Data is key to making sure that we can arrest the kinds of people who are doing this. Encryption has historically been used by abusers to protect themselves. They say predictions are bad. That means vote AF because we know the status quo sucks. They say Jackson facts. That's not the AF. This isn't securitization, bro. We went for link turns.
What was the response to predictions?
That means vote AF because we know the status quo is bad.
Oh, I'm taking prep, by the way.
Yes,
And was there like a doc on my case at all?
Yeah, here I can.
That would be great. Thank you.
do believe I read every word of this. So
Great. I'll just give it a sec to wait for the doc.
yeah, it's in the chat.
I see it. Okay, cool.
I got backflow that now.
Oh, and sorry, what was the first response on my response on corn?
It's empirically denied by the European Union, which did not see this happen when they increased lawful access.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay, let's see.
I am going to I'm going to go through my case first, top down, and then your case.
Okay, so when you say top down, you mean go through the stuff I sent in the chat, then the stuff I like the analytics on case, and then you're going to go to my case.
Yes, I think so. I'm just going top down on my flow. But I assume that's the same as what you did. So
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I backflipped. So well, hopefully, right? All right.
yeah,
I'm good.
it's like if it's a mess at all, like feel free, obviously, for the sake of the demo, to ask me any clarifications after. Okay, cool. Great. They say innovation, but all of the things they mention are still a kind of door, and it needs to happen quick, which means they won't be able to develop the really good kinds that are kind of a pie in the sky. They say that they're building vulnerabilities now, but they're not very good at it. The encryption is working according to all of our cards. It's also scalar. They've conceded that. They say that the compliance will like make more good lawyers come, but why? This, I think, assumes that those good lawyers are actually good at doing anything. The whole structure of the criminal justice system is fucked. That's our argument. There's no incentives. They're behind on the incentives debate. This won't be enforced this way. They say politics, but this is like plainly false according to any history or logic. Like after 9/11, we introduced way more surveillance, and then that just created even more security theater, which allowed people to be okay with even more surveillance. And it was sort of a spiral to some extent, which is the Jackson evidence that they flat out conceded. They say that the fiat lawful access, that's our point, that's bad. They say the panopticon effect, you like push the kids off of the iMessage. I think a lot of these kids just won't leave iMessage. That's where their friends are, that's where their communities are. And they can't also, the other platforms are hard to get to if you don't have expertise. And this would double turn your offense about how you stop cyber criminals. The answers to predictions were over time. Also, our argument is not about just predictions in general. It's about specifically expert predictions of geopolitics and things like cyber scenarios that you're talking about, the predictions of all of these different interconnected actors, which our argument does not fall for. Down the turns that I read at the bottom of my case, on relations, you say that there's no warrant, it's scalar, and also there's no restraints. On modeling, there is an example, it's Rwanda, and it doesn't beg the question of the link. On civil war, there is a warrant, people get fed up and scared of the government, they take up arms. On cyber industry, they say that the EU disproved that, but that's not true. I think probably the EU has a worse cyber industry now, and Australia specifically proves this is exactly what happens. Plus the US is different, has a different consumer culture. Australia also proves, which answers the responses to econ. Now on the response on authoritarianism, on the double bind, like ignore the double bind. Obviously this would apply to any constructive material that is remotely interactive. This was already conceded in cross, I think, and we get both. Sandbagging is probably fine and non-unique. The important thing that's conceded is that I could just restate this again, which makes it a new argument. Lawful hacking is really hard. FBI against Apple proved that. It took many months just for one device. So even if this is the status quo, there's no comparison of the effectiveness of this, and it probably is fine. Encryption has been proven to work according to all of the evidence in the round. They say the EU proved that there's no trade-off, or they proved that there's no freeing up of resources. I think they probably did see this. They read no evidence on this question. Incarceration has risen in the EU since they did this, and it probably frees up comparatively more, which means it doesn't matter if the squo is happening. It's scalar, clearly. And this causes even more of this unlawful access, which is an additional link into all of the framing stuff that we talk about. Some more turns on their case. One violates the Constitution, causing court clog and precedent that allows politicians to ignore common law for more warmongering, or is struck down so only our immediate perceptual links trigger. Two, creates unprotectable vulnerabilities for hackers, which tanks the economy and leaks secret vulnerabilities, prompting attacks. Three, everyone they want to hold accountable switches to non-US tech platforms. You only catch vulnerable populations who are unaware. Crocker 15, any mandate to provide exceptional access to encrypted content would violate the First Amendment. It would entail the need to hold plain text. This provides targets for attackers, what it would do to cryptographic development. Stop it dead. This law would act as a prior restraint, which is highly vulnerable, a constitutional challenge. If Apple is forced to backdoor iMessage, everyone interested in privacy, including criminals, will switch. On the rest of their arguments, they're not going to go for China because they conceded the framing, but also there's no link. What does Trump do? No explanation of this. And China will compete anyway with Europe, for example. Plus, it would double turn innovation, since innovation would cause them to compete even faster and magnifying the chances of AGI. Plus, there's also a risk of like infinite pleasure from AI, so it sort of cancels out. They say that if they win a cyber link, it also creates more crackdowns. There's absolutely no warrant for this whatsoever. And I would say it's much lower than the amount of crackdowns that are enabled by the destruction of encryption. There's a sort of a cap. Encryption is a cap on how much the crackdowns they can even do in their world. Also on cyber, their evidence is not about communications, it's about data that is being shared right now. It does not say lawful access, and it's about tracking criminals, which fails because they use different platforms. And tech companies get mad, so they'll cooperate less. They lobbied against this, which means that existing public-private cooperations disappear, and you suppress innovation instead. You scare investors away, which is perceptual.
Okay, ready for cross next? So what evidence do you read that says incarceration is up in the EU since lawful access happened?
It's not specifically since lawful access, but incarceration is generally up in the EU right now.
Which evidence is that read in case?
I didn't cite a specific author. I can give
So
you
why
one.
should wait. So you think a good norm is you make an unwarranted claim in the speech, and then in cross-ex you provide me new evidence that you never read in the round? Like, you think that's a good norm for debate?
So I don't think that the evidence I provide in cross-ex should be like held as if it was in a speech, but I actually do think it's an important norm in debate to allow students to cite things that are factual information, especially things that are somewhat common knowledge, which I would say like crime rising across Europe is. Can I ask you?
Sure.
Cool. So can you explain a little bit about this infighting between companies, or I guess, is it between the company and the government that's happening right now?
So we have two scenarios for infighting, I guess. The first is, yes, between companies and the government. We have read uniqueness evidence, which says right now companies are getting mad because the government keeps going in and fighting it. There's really two options for what companies do. Either the government helps build in 0-day access from the beginning, something you've conceded like 15 times, right? Or there is this kind of like oppositional where they're hacking into it afterwards, which is creating the problem. So this is what responded to your San Bernardino example. You're assuming that all of this happens without the compliance of the companies. We're saying that some of them will, right? But this is more about, so you guys, yeah, hold on. Let me rephrase this. The cooperation stuff is about what happens post-cyber attacks, which we're not going for, so it's not relevant. The other cooperation we were talking about was how companies interact between the EU and the US market. Since there's different compliance standards right now, those companies aren't cooperating with each other, and the governments aren't able to cooperate with each other. So there was a lot of claims about cooperation that obviously like went in multiple different directions. So you say there's no warrant for crackdowns, but your story for 9/11 says that when terrorist attacks happen, things like the Patriot Act happen, and we deprive people of their rights. So which is it? Does the government respond to attacks with increased crackdowns or not?
Yeah, this is actually a fair question. I think that is a good point. There is clearly a warrant for crackdowns that I provided myself. I would say that the warrant is vastly different in a lot of different ways. So number one, I would say that cyber attacks have to reach a certain level to be on par with something that is so shocking as something like 9/11. We see millions of cyber attacks every day. They're kind of a dime a dozen. So you'd have to prove that it actually meets that threshold. And secondly, the argument that I was making about encryption being a cap, I think is a pretty unique argument here, that like even if there was another 9/11 kind of scale, it doesn't create the level of capacity for crackdowns that would exist if you allow just open access to encrypted data.
Okay, cool. Oh, and then what was the warrant for why 9/11 or like surveillance spirals?
Oh yeah, the argument was from Jackson originally, which is that these responses become an example of security theater, which convince people that the threats are really, really bad. If people see, for example, in TSA, that like they're making a whole fuss about terrorism, and they get more scared of terrorism.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
I'm going to be right back. Just going to grab another piece of paper.
Okay, are we good? So the order is going to be my case and then your case. You good? This isn't parliamentary debate. You need evidence. My opponent just concedes all of our evidence throughout this round. They say that encryption is working right now because a bunch of evidence on their case is arbitrarily thought pieces, just saying, yes, encryption is powerful right now. We have read specific evidence which says, like data from the U.S. government, which says that right now they're subverting all these things. That's Rosenstein, Korn, and Savage. Right? Specifically, Rosenstein 17 says right now lawful hacking is the scope. It is described 0 day, where it says that right now the United States government is giving money to corporations to build in 0 day exploits, which means that right now they can access all of these different operations. That means that there is only a risk that the uniqueness flows to the affirmative, that judicial restraint is not happening now, or that authoritarian overstretch is the status quo. Our second argument that we're going for on our case is that that innovation solves all of our arguments. Resolution doesn't mandate compliance, which means that as long as the free market determines winner, that's going to resolve all their options. Their response to this was to group it and say all of these options are bad. These are extraordinarily distinct options. Remember, something like split key is extraordinarily different than something like compelled disclosure, which really doesn't even build in a backdoor because it just requires that a warrant forces you to hand over your phone. They've also conceded the specific analysis from Savage 18, which is the most likely implementation of this is a hard-coded system which requires the data to go to a third-party place where a warrant would require to build into it, which means that it's always going to be tried after the affirmative to resolve any sort of the judicial restraint arguments that come to their case. They said incarceration went up in the European Union. There's no evidence of this, and it's a new argument, but our argument is that there's only a risk that restraint happens, particularly in the United States, because unique system. On the innovation stuff, they say it's unconstitutional or that it's unpredictable, so terrorists are going to be, there's no impact to terrorists. Remember, Alder Jackson evidence takes this out. We're just going for authoritarianism. They say also that it's tried after the affirmative, since innovation isn't happening in the status quo, and the affirmative will increase that. They say that switches violates the First Amendment first. There's no warrant for this. This only applies to very particular instances of encryption, which we say that would make that the less likely method of implementation, because in countries where companies wouldn't be allowed to do it. That's second is Savage 18 answers this, says the specific policy that we'll defend doesn't violate either the First or Fourth Amendment, and there's no impact to this. They haven't filed it, and there's no reason why court claims bad. If anything, it's a double term of their case, since they're reading evidence. This is the courts were bad. They have conceded that there's going to be a crackdown that's an 9/11 stuff. On the cooperation stuff, there's no evidence on their case. Conceded that predictions fail right now, which means that the only thing you can do is vote for fiat takes out the link. Remember, lawful access means that governments have to comply with a warrant, and that there are judicial systems in place, which means there's only a risk that we solve their argument. On all the encryption stuff. First, they say that right now lawyers are going to, or we say that right now lawyers are leaving, which turns all their arguments. They say there's no reason that they're going to come back, but we say there's obviously a distinction between a lawyer who is willing to directly target somebody and background assumptions of racism within the criminal justice system. Plus, they don't solve the overall criminal justice situation. It's tried after the affirmative. The propaganda is definitively an AF argument. The fourth argument is, or the panopticon argument is what we're going for. We say that these systems are always going to be bad. They've conceded that right now these platforms collect all their data is inevitably used against them in criminal justice system. All of this data is literally used to in racist ways to target these particular people. They say kids won't switch, which means there's no terminal solvency for the negative. Look, this debate is really simple. They've conceded a lot of evidence that says authoritarianism is the quo, and link arguments which say restraint does happen. It's a risk that you vote affirmative. Oh, summaries are hard.
Very true. Okay, I'll take a little bit of prep. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, I'm good.
Cool. The app loses when they agree the criminal justice system, all the lawyers in it, all the politicians who benefit from it, all of the people, the media, all have terrible incentives that define Blackness as criminal. Who are the criminals they're going to go after? They're going to go after people who are criminal as a result of just having the wrong color skin. They're not going to go after the cyber hackers or holding themselves accountable. Instead, they're going to be locking up more civil rights activists, like what happened with the FBI in the past. They're going to be locking up more people seeking abortions or escaping from IPV. They're going to find new ways to criminalize POCs. Do they get beat to death in prison, stripped of their rights? This multiplies the system of mass incarceration and structural violence. It doesn't matter how they get the data, they're going to do this. Split key, they get their phones, who cares? They get data that is enough for them to throw more of them in jail so that more of them get beat to death in prison. That's enough for you to easily negate. All of them are currently using encryption to survive. That evidence has been conceded. It's true, there's also evidence that the government has things that allow them to do lawful hacking in some cases. Both of these are true. The problem is that there isn't any evidence in the round about the extent of that lawful hacking that Orlowski has read. And I have explained why it doesn't have a very high extent. All of my evidence says that these people are successfully surviving. And also, like we've seen in places like the FBI case, that it takes like months to unlock one phone. So clearly this is not working very well for them. And encryption is also working. It's clearly scalar. This is the most important thing in the round. One, it means that it creates more systematic vulnerability to every impact. Two, it's way more predictable than their experts because it's much more complex to investigate like the nuances of the economy and the interactions between tech companies and terrorists and things like that. And there are way more intervening actors that solve those things. Their answers to this, by the way, are over time and not at all applicable to the Menand evidence that I read, which once again is specific to predictions of things like politics and geopolitics and the economy, not predictions of what we already know empirically has happened and will happen again. Every time the law enforcement gets new data, they use it to criminalize more Black people. That's not a prediction. That's already happening. And it's like, obviously this evidence applies to varying degrees. It's not about predictions in general, which was also a response that you conceded. And this is what national security dialogue is designed to distract you from. Just because they try to link in their national security stuff into my framing doesn't make it any less national security. They're just saying, oh, we should allow the government to target minorities to avoid the government then later maybe targeting minorities. They're just trying to assure you this is for your own good. We can let the government have a little bit of mass incarceration as a treat. This doesn't sound very good to me, but they're also just losing their own case. One, I didn't really catch a link extension at all coherently, either of offense or into my framing really. If it is an extension into my framing, the only link that I ever heard was that like it's something a la 9/11 causes crackdowns, but that would require terrorism, which Orlowski said in his last speech he's not going for. It would be some kind of cyber terrorism. There's also a lot of offense that's dropped on their side. For example, they've dropped that the tech companies get mad at this, that they lobby against this. There's less cooperation with the government, that the US has a different consumer culture, and this will scare away consumers, causing this to destroy the economy, which causes more terrorism and more like, allied lower confidence, so it sparks wars and stuff. All of that creates these same crackdowns that you say. So that debate is a wash anyway.
Okay, good for Grand Cross.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened to, or I guess like, why did the EU do this action?
The EU probably, I mean, there's a lot of possible explanations I could give. The one that I'm tempted to say, which might not be true, is like, oh, the EU is also racist. And so they like wanted to lock up more people. I don't actually know if that's true of the EU. It might be. The other possible explanation is like, maybe the EU has a very different reason for doing this. And like, they genuinely thought that this would like stop terrorists because they're sort of all drinking the Kool-Aid of national security.
So
yeah.
I guess like, how would a random traffic stop like with a racist cop go different as a result of like encryption backdoors existing?
So it's not about traffic stops. The argument that I'm making is that it is now possible in your world for the government to just look at anyone's phones. They always will have probable cause. Maybe the probable cause comes from the traffic stop, for example. The probable cause comes from freaking anything, though. If your skin is black, there's probable cause against you. The only difference now is it is now hyper efficient for the government to just find any speck of anything in your phone, which means it's 10 times more efficient.
Hold on. That's the opposite, though. Wait, what? You don't get into the phone until you have a warrant. Wait, what?
That's what I'm saying, is the warrant is inevitable. And then they, after
Wait, you're saying, hold on. You're saying it is inevitable that the government can always get a warrant for black people. Which card says that at any point in this round?
Clearly,
What?
Yeah, so it's a bit of an exaggeration to say always inevitable. That's using hyperbole. It's the same hyperbole, though, that is in the card that you conceded, which literally says that.
I said your evidence is hyperbole. I have specific data which disproves it. You're reading blogs that are exaggerating this particular context. That was in both speeches.
I hear what you're saying, but I do think that this is about something different. I want to be very clear about this. I agree that you criticizing my arguments about how encryption is working and stuff, and you've got this other great data about backdoors. But what you haven't contested is the card at the very top of my case, which literally says, in the context of the criminal justice system, people view blackness as a perfect circle Venn diagram with criminality.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's where
you don't solve that, right? You don't have an alternative. You don't solve that, right? Which means it's a question of data and a strength of link question. You've conceded multiple links from the app. So I guess, how do you make racism better in the criminal justice system?
I certainly don't. It's really screwed up.
So you don't even claim that you make any difference at all.
Well, no, there's a very large difference that's made, which is that you multiply the amount of mass incarceration that happens. And you render people seeking abortions that much more vulnerable. You render all marginalized communities that much more vulnerable, which is what all of my evidence says.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
To be clear, I'm certainly not saying that I'm going to make the criminal justice system better. I think that's kind of that ship seems to have sailed.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm good. Okay, this is a 2-minute speech. Okay, I got to rewire my brain for this. This is not a 6-minute speech. Okay, good. We good? The order is your case. Ready? Top level, you can't group an overview that has 7 different responses to how implementation happens. They're assuming that it happens in this. All of our argument is that right now, zero-day encryption is the status quo. Governments are giving money to corporations to build in backdoors that mean they can access everything at any time, which means there's only a risk that compliance with lawful mandates go up post-plan. They've conceded a couple different potential operations that would do it. For example, client-side scanning was explicitly flagged in the last speech. This would require the individual to explicitly give over the thing, which means that it wouldn't be something that requires an algorithmic change. They've conceded the Savage 18 evidence, which explicitly says you would not need to change algorithms, which there's no risk of a link from their argument. They say that I don't have a link, but I explicitly extended the judicial restraint at Quorum 17 argument, which says that going through a transparent legal system means that there's at least some check on it. And I conceded or extended the fiat argument, which you have conceded, which says that lawful access means that you need to get a warrant before you intervene in the phone, which means that there is at least some check on it, whereas in the status quo, there's no check. Fiat solves all your arguments, but also you have conceded 2 different straight terms to your case, which are going to end this debate. These are both linear terms, which means I don't even need to insolvency for the racism claims. The first is that the platforms are bad. You've conceded that in the status quo, all of these different platforms criminalize blackness and are used data against them. Remember, every argument from the last speech was data is used against blackness, which means that moving people away from these platforms is a good thing. They did have defense on this rebuttal, but it was not in the summary. They did not extend the argument that kids like iPhones, which means that there's only risk that individuals are moved away from platforms, which net solves all arguments. They've also conceded out of the last speech that the lawyers do at least stop bleeding. That is net offense, because right now, because of illegal actions on the part of extrajudicial operations as a result of lawful access, lawyers are leaving the field, which means that there is a difference. Look, you have to believe there's a difference between someone who's actively racist and trying to go after individuals of color and an individual who is just supporting a larger system. Obviously, both of those are bad, but one is explicitly worse. This debate is over because Jackson takes out all of their offense. They can't go for any cybersecurity turns, and the only turn that they go for in tech cooperation is net good for us, because tech cooperation is how zero-day access happens, which means it's net good to vote for the affirmative.
Okay, is everyone ready? Okay. At this point in the round, Orlowski's burden seems almost impossibly high. Like, he has to prove that when you give the government access to just unlimited encrypted data, this actually reduces incarceration. This like reduces incarceration of Black people. I don't think that's true. And there's also like not really offense that's extended into this. Like, the only offense that maybe is extended is this implication that like it is implied that because the government is using unlawful methods now, and then there's lawful methods in the AF, that then the AF like prevents the unlawful methods. But this was challenged, and there was never really an explanation for why this is a trade-off between the two. Like, clearly the government would just continue doing both. If they can't get a warrant, then they just do the thing they did before. Like, I don't know why there's a difference between the two. But I think this is way too defensive for Orlowski to have a chance in this round. So here's the extension that wins the round. The criminal justice system is racist. When you get a lawful access to something, it means you're in line with the normal functions of the criminal justice system, in which Blackness is a perfect circle with criminality. That was conceded. They say, oh, there's at least some check. At least you need a warrant, but you can get a warrant to arrest any Black person. That's the argument that we were making at the very top. That's the structure of the criminal justice system. If you give them more of a reason to, more of an ability to, more capacity to, more data to do this, it just further churns out 10 times the mass incarceration system that exists right now. No, we don't solve it, but at least we don't make it 10 times worse. It doesn't matter how you get the data. It could be that you hand over a phone. Great, that is the link. All of these people now have to hand over their phones to implicate themselves, to get arrested and thrown in jail. If they use a phone, then they're at risk of this. Certainly, this defense that Orlowski hinges the round on, that's like, oh, well, they will like just move off of something else. It's not applied to the phones, and it's certainly not all of these people who are at risk. They are currently being protected by encryption, because even if lawful hacking does exist right now, it takes months to unlock one device. It is certainly not access everything at any time. It is a question that is comparative. There's more incarceration ability when you give law enforcement access to more of your data, which furthers mass incarceration further.
GG. Man, summaries are hard. There's so much going on.
Very true.
I felt better after your summary, though. After my summary, I was like, what did I just say for 3 minutes? And then after your summary, I was like, oh, yeah, his speech is short, too.
True.
I think that was interesting. I like the offense I went for. I don't think you answered lawyers or moving off platforms, but I like the ethos. I thought the final focus ethos was good.
Maybe
I think
what was like the offense that you were going for?
So yeah, I mean, dude, it's perfectly reasonable. It didn't make sense. I don't know. I thought I was going for two specific, well, I guess 3 pieces of offense. The first is that obviously lawful as a constitutional premise. Obviously, you have like the defense on it with the, whatever. That's not really what I'm going for. I mean, there's a card that says it, so I'm like hopeful if the judge like pulls evidence at the end of the round, they'll just like read and it does say it, right? And you just have like an assertion, right? And then I think the other 2 pieces of offense, the second is this platform switching argument. I don't really have any ink on that in the last speech or in the summary. I think that is good because, again, I didn't explain it, right? This is the problem with like these time constraints, right? I'm thinking about our like data colonialism math and like how data is used, like, and how just like benign actions on phones. Of course, that's not explained in like a 2-minute speech though, right? So I think there's like a huge risk nobody votes on that. But to me, I think going for the moving off platform stuff is a risk that, Black people are interacting with like the larger carceral system, which just like includes big technology. And then the third is just the lawyer stuff, which just says right now we're bleeding lawyers because lawful access doesn't exist. So if you pass it, there is like some increase, or at least like less of a decrease in ethical lawyers, which like means that the criminal justice system is on net a little less racist, right? I probably should have just said it like that in the final focus instead of going fast though, because I don't think a lot of those arguments are clear. But I thought what you went for was very persuasive. I especially think like just like sitting down and just like making it an ethos debate is probably your best bet here. I thought you did that very, very well in the final.
That makes sense. Yeah, I guess the final focus strategy against your 3 collapses is the first one is the lawful stuff. I'm just trying to say lawful is the problem.
Right.
The second one you're going for is the like they move off of this. What I tried to do in the final focus, which might not have been very clear, was 2 ways to handle this. One was like, I'm trying to hijack your link about how they just hand over phones and be like, well, okay, these people are not going to like get off of the grid to the extent that they just no longer have a phone.
Yeah.
And then second, just like there's no reason why very many people will switch, even if it's true that some will.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, I think those are decent answers.
And then
I think I went for the wrong version personally.
Yeah.
I should have gone for, like, I think client side scanning was probably the worst option for me to go for. But it was the only one I could explain in like 5 seconds.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. That makes sense. For the last one about lawyers, I actually don't have anything on it in Final Focus, but I'm just sort of like betting that the lawful stuff takes it out, right? That like
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think your whole analysis is like about the criminal like I said, this is going to be a clash debate, and I think that this was what I was kind of hoping for in this practice round. It's like I have all of these embedded tricks within the app that should deal with these arguments, but I think this is like a just perfect example of just like sometimes truth outweighs tech, right? Like I think there's some rounds I win this maybe, but I personally would vote for you, right? Because I just think the app is nonsense, right? Like I don't know, like it seems like, you know, obviously that's just like a personal opinion. I don't know how I would adjudicate this if I was like debating and I was a judge and I had to like defend my RFD to both of you, right? But I just as a human, I'm like, dude, this app is such yap. Like it's such nonsense.
I really want to, I think it'd be fun. I might try to do this. Like I want to do a redo of your Final Focus and my Final Focus. I think it's really interesting. I think if I did your Final Focus, I would probably just go for one of the 3 things you went for.
Yeah, I think that's probably a big problem too, is that I spread myself thin, didn't have the time to explain any of those. I was just like hoping for like technical concessions being enough, which I think is like a problem with just like generally me judging so much in like a very specific way that I'm not like, I think you were much better at like elaborating on those things because that is very much how you judge, right? Like more of like a little bit of a big picture on it, you know? And I think that kind of definitely hurt me here, which is so funny because you know I would yell at a kid if I saw this Final Focus, right? Like I would absolutely be like, you need to collapse. What is wrong with you? A conceded link is a conceded link. Extend it, weigh it, and win the debate. Like I would have yelled at you for so long after this round.
I think hindsight is 2020. I mean, same with my Final Focus, obviously, and probably with a lot of the speeches in the round. I think my biggest weakness in rounds like this is honestly just tracking. Like, I think I'm very good at flowing as a judge, but when I'm in it, like, oh man, it's tough.
Dude, I don't understand. I have 4 pieces of paper. Where did this come from? I don't like. I genuinely, I totally agree with you, and I think it's also like the nature of like I don't debate that much, especially against good people. Like most of what I'm doing is like crushing freshmen, right? And so. Yeah, I'm not used to like just dealing with this while also having to come up with answers. And also, it's definitely, I think it's a great lesson. This is something I talk about with kids all the time is like, I think this is why you need to just like be doing practice rounds more and more and more because like, dude, the truth doesn't matter. I think that the evidence I read is phenomenal in this debate. And I never got a chance to explain it because the techie nonsense. Man, after your rebuttal, I was like, great, this is going to be so easy. And then after my summary, I was like, what did I say? What did I just say? Oh my God. And it's all just a messy flow every single time. It's because of the messy flow. Like I know what I need to do, but like, dude, especially my flow, I don't even know what was on this. And I think also the way you're debating also just like kind of derails me a little bit because like you just say stuff. Like you're just like reading whole contentions with no warrants, no cards. Like how are you gonna read? How are you gonna say this is unconstitutional and court clogged with no cards, right? And it sucks because
there was a card for that one.
The second one, there was the for the First Amendment one. Not the first time you said it though. The first time I floated, I was like, wait, what? And then underneath it was the card. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I was just sitting.
A lot of this is by design. Like
it is. Yeah.
In this round is. And you messed this up a little bit, but I wanted to make my side very clean and very simple, and your side just a mess. I wanted to make your side just like untrackable, like what is happening on that side. I think I succeeded a little bit in this, unfortunately, in confusing myself on your side a little bit as well. But the fact that you read so many responses, I was hoping that you would cover the stuff at the bottom of my constructive first, and then you would have less time to cover like the actual stuff. Dude,
I think honestly, I should not have even covered that stuff. I just didn't have I didn't have many arguments to say at the top of your flow because it's all interactions. It's like all just link turns, so I can't do much at the bottom or top of it, right? And then so I felt like I had to answer the cyber stuff, but also, dude, I should have just been like, no cards, no warrants. Seriously, is this debate now? What? And like literally no warrants, dude. Some of those, oh my god. But I thought that was like an interesting strategy. I think it's funny that both of us added little things that just to try to derail the other person that are not like technical substance. Like that's what I did with that overview. I figured like the refutation one. I think I got a time differential there though. I think it's worked out all right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we both got time differentials on those, but I think I don't know, like the strategy with the analytic blippy turns in the constructive. I actually thought about it a lot for this one. The idea is like one, if it seems ridiculous, that's kind of the point because I'm kind of using it to make fun.
Right.
Security. And so I used that to maybe ease off some of the criticism. But then secondly, I think specifically having it be in constructive creates a risk for you where I could elaborate on one of these and add a card to it in rebuttal. And then there becomes a wicked problem in the debate where there isn't any paradigmatic norm on what to do in that situation. And so you would have to hedge your bets that like the judge would allow new responses to the argument. And then I would obviously say, oh, you've conceded the warranting, you've just responded to the card. So you're only allowed new responses to the specific card. It would be like a weird,
I should have just dealt with that quicker. I should have just extended Jackson to the scenarios and been like, these are we agree, done.
Right? I knew that you were going to do that since first cross, obviously. The reason that I went for this stuff anyway is because I thought you were going to go more for the crackdown stuff. If I win, there is some attack or some cyber attack, then it triggers crackdown. And so I thought when you were conceding Jackson, you were conceding it incorrectly. But obviously now I know you completely knew what you were doing. And I should have just been like, oh, Jackson's conceded. That means ignore everything else, right? Ignore literally everything, ignore your case, ignore everything except for the turns that directly apply to my case that aren't based in any national security. And then the debate would have been so much simpler and cleaner, I think.
And I think if I had just made that decision earlier, my summary would have been just easy, right? Because I started writing the final before your summary because I was like, I mean, I know what I have to do to salvage this. The arguments are there, right? I know that I extended them. I know Jackson was extended, which can get me out of, because I felt like I was dropping. I just it was kind of hard to flow what you were saying at the bottom of cyber. And so I figured there was probably the other problem is there's just double turns galore down here, right? Both of us are double turning ourselves all over the place, which is inevitable when your case is a double turn, right? And I'm just not dealing. I just should have committed to dealing with that earlier, because I mean, I don't know. This debate was exactly the debate I wanted. My links were conceded. I have them. Your answer is nuh-uh. It's racist. I promise. Right? And then I just don't explain them. Right? I don't know. I think I could have done a little bit of a better job explaining the fiat warrant stuff, because I feel like I let you get away with the narrative on that too much, and I liked your narrative there.
Yeah, I mean, the case was designed to just absorb your responses instead of refuting them.
I also feel like I needed to do a little bit of a better job comparing the San Bernardino and 0-day encryption stuff. I thought you did a good job with the narrative there, but that's preposterous that I'm reading cards talking about how every interaction goes, and you're just yeah, but one case took a couple months, right? That to me is just so stupid that I'm just I should have said that, right? I feel like I kind of alluded to it at the top of the rebuttal, but again, I spread myself out and didn't just get to that issue really quickly. I think I would have made it so much easier. Man, after your case, I was just wait, this is what I wanted to answer. This is awesome.
Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, when you said the war power stuff, I prepped so much on specifically war powers. I thought you were gonna go for restrains executive ability to go to war.
That's what I was gonna go for.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
It's just so, wait, you just don't understand. It's so untrue, and I know you, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I prepped 4 cards on war powers doesn't apply.
Yeah. No. So that's an argument. Like, it's funny. I was talking to one of my kids about this. This argument specifically is I was like, the argument is built around the link and me using the link strategically. And then if they concede the internal link because they don't understand it, which I'm desperately hoping for because that card is mad confusing, right? Then I'll go for it, right? But since you read the whole framing stuff, I was just like, I mean, I don't want to go for a China war scenario. I think that if this was like, this is different because if this was like a real debate that when I was debating, there's no world where I wouldn't have gone for the China scenario, like just like dealt with the framework, right? But I do want to focus on a link debate, right? And like that's what it's designed for. So I was like,
that makes sense.
Let's have a real debate. Let's have a good clash debate. It's hard to like preempt it in the conversation before and then just be like,
yeah, true. You were saying that and I was like, oh, is this gonna be like I half expected to go much more for framing. But yeah. I think probably this round just would have been much cleaner if both of us like were explicit about what's filtered out earlier.
Yeah, I agree. I think if my rebuttal had committed, then it would have been clear. But then your rebuttal would have been able to commit. But I don't know. I guess I would have been in it. Again, this is the problem with speaking first, right? So I wanted to speak first against you to make this harder, because I figured your 2AR or your final focus will be good. And I figured that it would make my rebuttal almost useless, right? In a lot of ways, which I think it kind of did. I think that,
I don't know. I feel like you went for almost exclusively offense that came out of your second speech, right?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. It was all in the constructive and in the second speech. But I would have been able to do that in the second while being able to frontline those cards, which is what I would have preferred because everything that I said explicitly on your case was like such defense, and I would not have done it in a world where I was speaking second, right? So I think all of that is like waste of time. Like it's not high level hacking for IPv. Oh, dude, I'm a moron. I didn't extend that turn you conceded.
Which turn?
The IPv turn that was like sometimes local police forces need to get into phones to help protect
like
just the general like human trafficking style like IPv argument on the app.
I think I would have just gone for my link outweighs. Like,
of course, and you just go for the criminal justice system's racist. This just means that they arrest like black men more. Of course, right? Absolutely, right. But it is offense. I should have extended in the rebuttal or in the summary quickly.
I don't know. I think it would have been unstrategic to extend it because I don't really see it being the main ballot at the end of the debate.
And like it is probably like way too tied up in like a securitization logic that we're probably critiquing with Jackson. Yeah, that's probably true.
And I also just think literally on magnitude, like literally within the framing, right? Like I probably just access like mass incarcerations affects more people than like the couple people you protect from IPV from like arresting some of these people. Like, I don't know. I would just go for like arresting one innocent person is more important, like outweighs 10 guilty people kind of rhetoric.
Oh, I also want to talk a little bit about the Menand collapse. So I just want to hear your thoughts on this differentiation. And what you think is yap from the round and what you think is like actually representative of the card. So I ended up not dealing with it because I don't think it matters for much of the debate, but I'm very curious like about this evidence, right? Because people read it all the time and I'm gonna hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't matter in the context of where this debate went. But so I think people read this evidence wrong when they usually read it. I don't think it's about consequentialism at all. I don't think it's about predictions, really. It's about a very specific sort of subset of predictions. And there's two reasons for that. One, it is specifically talking about like the structure of media and academia rewarding confident judgments from experts. So like, I could predict something, and it even says this, that like people can predict things, like people who read the paper can predict things just as much as experts. That's also, by the way, what I would have said if the debate had come down to the analytic turns, because I would have been like, well, who cares about your cards?
Which is something to be clear, that's something we should flag. That is a great strategy to use in K debates, especially securitization debates, where you're reading stuff like Jackson that is indicting expert logic, right? Like absolutely just such a good strategy,
Right. But I would have took it to a weird extreme where if the debate had gone to that, I would have literally just gone for my own analytic turns within security against your security cards and been like, analytics equal experts.
and then just done the debate out. Like Manan says that we are equal. Not that predictions are impossible, but like we are equally good at predictions. Like I am equally good at predicting as your experts or whatever. And then I would have just gone for like the weighing between the turn and your national security stuff. Anyway, so that's one caveat on Manand. The bigger one, though, is that if you look at the Tetlock study that Manand is citing and all of the questions that Tetlock asks to these experts, it's like, is there going to be a coup in like this country? Or like, is Canada going to dissolve? Or like, is this country going to join this war? Or like, is the economy going to crash? It's all stuff that is geopolitical or economic. None of it is predictions of like, is the US going to arrest more people? Or like, I don't know, like, like I feel like there are different classes of predictions. And my analysis is just that the type of predictions that Manan analyzes are one, much more difficult to make because it's more complex, and two, more in line with your links and less in line with mine. So it's probably true that like all things are hard to predict, but yours are harder to predict than mine. And that's how we would have gone for it. Like, we can predict.
And that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. No, I was just kind of interested in that because, I obviously that card is read as 6 words most of the time.
Yeah.
And I cut you were with me at UT when I recut the card, but, we didn't go back to the Tetlock study,
Yeah.
And I've certainly, like, obviously we've seen that as a counterplan for years, but I mean, that's a counterplan you copy paste read because it's 14 seconds as a bad process kind of thing. That's not something like I've invested a ton of time in, not my style of debate generally.
Yeah. I looked into it a lot when I was like prepping. I prepped a couple things that caused me to look into it. One, on the Taiwan topic last year, I prepped this interesting thing about like VUCA, like ambiguity and stuff. Like I don't know what VUCA stands for. It's like, I don't know. It's something about complexity and ambiguity in the world, and causing like a lot of problems that cause policy failure. And the argument I wanted to spin was like a link into increasing ambiguity, which is like never a way that people use it, right? Like people use this as a framing card. I wanted to use it as like an impact that I'm linking into, and then use it to frame out all of their links as a result. And then the second reason I looked into it is because I was prepping the complexity, or the, incredible certitude K, which was like a critique of authors who like use certainty where they shouldn't in predictions, basically. That's like your author says this will happen. That's freaking ridiculous. Who gave them a crystal ball? Which came out of my frustrations with like the binaries of tech debate. And so as a result of that, I looked into it a lot. But then I realized like you can use this as like, I used it against you obviously in the animals argument last time when I was just like, this is less complex than your links. And so Manand applies to yours much more.
Okay, that's interesting. So I guess if kids took one, what do you think is the primary lesson kids should take from this practice round?
The primary lesson. So what happened in this round is I read framing and you went for links in. That's almost always going to happen. Like there's only 2 ways this round ever could go. Either 1, it comes down to links into my framing, or 2, it comes down to links into extinction / asterisks or whatever. Those are the only ways this round will ever go. So the other version of the round is just like you beat the framing and then I go for turns on your case with some kind of interaction. I think that's an important lesson because a lot of people don't really see it as simple as it is. Like it is literally that simple. There are literally only 2 rounds that could have been possibly produced by the combination of constructors that we read. Unless we're reading some random new offense that's completely different in the rebuttal. But in the absence of that, like it is so predictable what the final focus speeches are going to be. And all you should be doing is setting up for those. And so that's, I think, how you should prep and how you should like think about round vision is trying to simplify where you think the round is going as much as possible. Then this also sort of applies to the speeches. Like that should come out in the speeches themselves in the form of collapsing a bit more and trying to simplify things for the judges. I think when you get lost in the sauce, it's usually bad for you, especially if it's on your side. And so I think if you like whatever your ballot is in this round, if it's AF or neg, it's very likely that would be different if the team you voted against spent more time clarifying fewer things and explaining the interaction between those things
instead of trying to win more than sort of bite off more than they could chew.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say more or less the same thing, right? I think if either of us committed earlier, this would have been much, much cleaner. I think both of us would have had less stressful summaries.
Also, like, there's less room for intervention and split decisions if that happens.
Right. And that's what we're looking for, right? Because and this is something I think that kids will learn as they judge more, right? Is just these rounds are so much closer than you think. And like both of us could believe that we won this debate, right? I'm sure both of us do believe that we won this debate, right? And so like it's one of those situations where I'm probably wrong, but you might be wrong too, right? But
I think it's really important. And I actually I think I'll try to upload this to my YouTube if you don't mind. What I want to do,
that's the whole point, right?
What I'll do is I'll append to this part. I want to add, I'm going to go think about it a bit, and I'm going to make a coherent RFD for you, and then one for me, right?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I think that's a really important exercise to do that really does prove that these rounds are that close. If you can, think of a coherent technical RFD that you would stand by and you would defend for both sides, then I think you'll become a much better debater, because then you will be able to see how you could lose more. And I think sometimes when we're debating, we put on the blinders and we only think about our win conditions. But we never really think about in any charitable way, how the opponent might actually be ahead on certain things.
Right. No, I think that's absolutely true. That is a very fun exercise. I already know what both of my RFDs would be, to be honest.
Nice.
They would just be the final focuses. It would just be me repeating the final focuses, Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, obviously there's the uniqueness debate. I think that if you vote for me on the uniqueness debate, it's because I have blankedly extended 3 cards without much of an explanation of those cards, and that you understand how the 0-day warrant operates. I think that your one empiric example could take that out, right? And so I think a ballot for you would involve that as a uniqueness question. You believe that the one empiric example means that it does take a while. And you're you're framing on the instantaneous nature of warrants, particularly because, blackness means always get a warrant, right? I think that would be a pretty easy ballot for you. For me, I think that the ballot would have to be that you just both buy that the uniqueness is right now the government does what they want to do, that there is built-in 0-day access, which means they do get instantaneous access, or at the very least they have a lot of access across platforms, and that there is a risk that if you vote affirmative, that there is some level of judicial restraint, that lawyers stop leaving the judiciary, which reduces the amount of racism that happens in the system, because there is a difference between, types of people in the judicial process, and that moving away from platforms saves, some risk of interaction with the system, right? I think if you vote for you, it's just, but I think that's a much more complicated RFD than just the system is anti-black, you give them free reign to go in at any time, right? I think that is a simpler RFD that I could see a lot of people giving. But I guess I could also see a lot of people being I don't know, this lawyer's argument is in the 1AC, the 1NC, the summary, and the final. So I don't know. I think both of those would be very reasonable RFDs that reflect things that happened in the debate.
I think I'll go ruminate on it a bit, and then I'll hopefully craft a very in-depth RFD for your side. Because I think that's a fun exercise.
I do think literally to me that it is just 2 decisions. You decide if you think that the Bernardino example is good, right? And then lawful means instant. Which I don't know how I feel about, but I tend to find your arguments just more persuasive, but I think that's just because I read K's all day, every day, right? And so I'm just yeah, dude, this is exactly what would happen. There's no way this implementation is good. All it's done is negative K links, and so I just don't believe a word I'm saying. So I think it'd be kind of hard for me to vote for me. But I could also see a lot of neocon people. But then again, I kind of am conceding that from the start. I also just don't think there's an impact to my arguments, to be honest. I just really don't. I don't think there's enough of an in-depth explanation of how switching platforms leads to more violence against individuals, and nor do I think there's much of an explanation of how differentials in lawyers change how systemic racism happens. So I don't know. I think it'd be a little harder to vote for me personally.
I don't know. I'll come up with more in-depth stuff later. My mean is like, I think if I were to vote for you, it would have to be a paradigmatic thing a little bit. Like I think you might be ahead on uniqueness. So let's say you are ahead on uniqueness. I give you that. The San Bernardino example is trash compared to the actual analysis and cards that you give. So if I interpret that as like truly try or die, right? Like there is immediate unfettered access to all of these encrypted communications already. Literally the only difference is if it's lawful or unlawful. And maybe that isn't a difference at all, right? Like maybe if we're saying lawful access doesn't matter, and maybe you're behind that link going in, but does that matter, right? Because you still have the lawyer's link. So if you win that there's like literally no link on the neg, as in literally it is impossible to get worse than it currently is. There's no change in terms of the amount of access that law enforcement has to these people's communications. The only possible difference is the lawyer stuff. Then I think clearly you win, but that relies on an interpretation of like uniqueness as kind of absolute, if that makes sense. I think that you get into some really funky territory when you interpret uniqueness as being like, well, it could get worse. Like, maybe you're right that it's like 99% bad, but you could like get slightly faster access to this encrypted data, or like it is not exactly the same. It's like a little bit more. It's a little bit easier for them, and then there's still a way for you to win. You just have to compare the judges or the lawyer's link against this differential and the ease of the system accessing this information to sort of prosecute people. And I think that becomes fuzzy because neither of us really did that. Like that comparison didn't really exist in the round. I think I made some rhetorical claims that attempted to serve that purpose, but it certainly didn't apply technically. Like I didn't say that that's what it was doing. So a judge could sort of disregard those or look elsewhere on the flow for ways to tiebreak that, which would, I think, be a fair decision.
Yep. No, I tend to agree with you. And I think that is a big problem with how I debate is I just assume like old school policy, try or die in every moment of my life. Like risk of offense, just uniqueness controls the direction of the link. But I should have like applied that more and just been like 1 minute on uniqueness, 1 minute on a link, done, that is the structure of an affirmative final focus. And instead mine was 10 seconds, 20 seconds on the link, and then, minute 40 on each of the different ones. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to go teach a class.
Okay.
I'm excited to do this again next week.
Yeah.
I think next week we do K debate. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do it for sure.
I don't want to see. I think that the way you do K debate will be very, very, very instructive for a lot of people. The way you would answer Ks, because I think that most of the benefit that K debaters have is that the 1NC is so predictable, right? I know exactly what it's going to be, and it's something I can practice, but you don't practice, right? Yeah, sure, you're going to read topicality, and you know what I've done 6 hours of drills on, and you haven't, right? Like, which is why like the fairness link is just, or like the limits link is just true, right? But I think that you're like probably not going to just read 2 shells, and so I'm probably gonna have to answer stuff,
Yeah, it'll be fun for sure.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
I'll at least try something different than what I did against Bashir.
What'd you do? Oh yeah, I need to watch that and give an RFD. That's right.
Yeah,
that's my homework.
I literally just read my own non-topical K.
Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah, if that's your plan in this round,
no,
I would love that. Oh my god, that would be so good. Because then I'll read topicality and I'll go for my theory of power, which is so good, right?
Sure. Well, yeah, the K wasn't really non-topical. It had a tie to the resolution. I could have made it into substance offense as well. But yes, that's the funniest strategy, by the way. Like I've done that once before in a practice round where like I read like a K, but it was completely topical offense, and then they just spent like their entire speech on topicality, and I was like, actually, that votes against you. Like
you take out your own shell.
Yeah.
You say only the resolution is a voting issue. Bet.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think they read new substance offense in the rebuttal as a result. It was interesting.
But yeah, if you're neg on this topic, I think that's the move. I think that your K should just be topical if you're neg, because resolution's a bad idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I had a lot of fun. This is great. Every time it makes me want to like practice more, so I get back up to the like efficiency that I had when I was a child, right? It's such a boomer whenever I debate you.
Although I think it might be really interesting to at least at some point do like a very slow round.
I think so too. Yeah, I actually think I might be better if this was a slow round. I think I ended up like spreading myself out because it's like it was 3 issues. I know how to explain those issues. Why didn't I just explain those issues? You know,
Sure.
so silly, so silly.
I guess that's
I
the
think it's
last.
also just yeah. I think it's also just like me before the round being like, well, I mean, the biggest strength I have against Mac is that I've done more technical debate for longer. So like I should probably exploit that advantage, right? But that's doesn't work always, right? I think that's a great lesson.
Yeah, I think I've been trying to tell people for a very long time that like speed is not always your friend. Like sometimes it can hurt.
Yeah.
And
The
I think
difference is though, if I read 3 theory shells and 14 nibs and then was going fast, you would have a big problem.
yeah, absolutely.
But I think you're absolutely right in most substantive rounds. Like half the time, if you just explain the link, GG.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, you have a good night.
Yeah, see you
Your
later.
new house looks really nice. I'm very jealous that this is like
Yeah.
$200, but you know, it's great.
True. Okay, see you later.
See you later, man. Bye. Forgot to stop the recording.